Well, a very warm welcome to today's BA Community webinar. Today, I'm really pleased to say we're joined by Kathy Berkidge, who will be discussing how to build resilience through mindfulness. I first met Kathy at a conference a couple of months ago, and I was absolutely blown away by her presentation. It resonated with me on so many levels, and I was really pleased that Kathy agreed to present a webinar for us on a very similar topic today. If you're a BA or change professional of any type, you'll have probably found times where you feel under real pressure. Perhaps it's conflicting stakeholders, conflicting perspectives and deadlines. These sorts of things mean that we get pressure from all sides. And there might even be times in projects where people start playing the blame game. Yet, in amongst all of this chaos, we still need to do our job, and we need to do it effectively and efficiently. And that requires a level of resilience. So today we'll be exploring resilience and mindfulness. So before we get started, just a little bit about Kathy. Kathy is a BA professional with 30 years of experience in IT. She delivers BA and Agile training and coaching to many organisations in Australia and around the world. Since 1999, Kathy has been studying, practicing and teaching mindfulness. Kathy works with teams and individuals to implement mindful practices to improve teamwork, to be more innovative and to deliver better customer value. And she's passionate about seeing people, teams and organisations succeed and thrive in an environment of collaboration and harmony. So with a presentation entitled The Mindful BA, Building Resilience Through Mindfulness, Kathy, over to you.
Thanks so much, Adrian, and good morning, good afternoon and good evening to everybody. It's evening here in Melbourne, Australia, so I'm glad that you all could join us. I hope that you enjoy. I will give you one quick apologies in advance if my voice gets croaky. I've had a bit of a lurgy, but that's not going to hold us back. So the other day, I had one of those days. Perhaps many of you can relate to it. One of those days where a few things didn't go quite my way. Afterwards, I was in my car, I was driving home and I was thinking. I'd met with Steve earlier. Steve was our finance guy, probably my chief stakeholder. We had reviewed some of the new dashboards and reports that we were creating as part of this new project for him. But Steve wasn't real happy. He was concerned that the data wasn't accurate. He didn't think it was going to work quite the way he thought it would, and he actually wanted a bit more information than what he had originally requested, which always happens. So it all made sense, and we always know that when you see something, you find out more, but he really wasn't happy. So I took down his concerns and I listened as best as I could, and I mentioned, well, that's fine. We just need to prioritise some of this with the remaining work we've got. But Steve really wasn't listening. He really was a bit upset and could understand why it would take extra time. He was very concerned it was going to blow his budget. He had a deadline and he wanted it all now. He didn't want to wait. He didn't want to reprioritise. And he actually said to me, well, I'm going to be talking to Dave about this. And Dave, turns out, is not only his manager, but our sponsor. So I went away thinking, oh, gee, I really don't want Dave to see the things wrong. It's a minor thing. We can get through this. And I was thinking about that. And I was thinking, I'm going to have to talk to Sue. Now, Sue is my lovely project manager. She's very professional, very on the ball, and very lovely. Well, she's very easygoing most of the time. She doesn't like unexpected changes. And unfortunately, when things don't go to plan, Sue gets rather stressed, like many of us, I guess, do. Sue had a tendency as well to throw me under the bus and the team by saying, why didn't you know that? Why didn't you anticipate it? Why didn't you think that that was going to be the case? Expecting me to be almost psychic in my ability to predict requirements before they were identified. I wouldn't be surprised if we talked to Steve earlier, he wouldn't have known. So I was thinking about Sue. I was thinking about if Steve's going to talk to Sue first, what's Steve going to say about me to Sue, what's Sue going to think? Oh, and I was thinking about it's going to change the delivery date and Sue doesn't like that. We need more budget, more time. And then I thought, oh, gee, I'll have to talk to Rick. Now, Rick is like the brother I never had. He's my dev team lead And me and him have an awesome relationship, and most of the dev team do. In fact, all of us actually have a wonderful relationship. Rick is one of those little quiet achievers, but when things need to change, especially around data, Rick has a habit of making it the end of the world. He gets a little bit melodramatic, and he carries on about refactoring and rejigging and having to do everything. So I was worrying about what he'd say to Sue and what Sue would say to him, whether Steve would talk to Rick first. I was thinking about all this stuff, getting a little bit uptight, thinking I better get in there fast and, oh, gee, what am I going to have to do tomorrow? And then all of a sudden, I was at home. Here I was. How did I get here? Did I stop at the lights? Did I give way? Were there other cars on the road? I don't even remember. Were there even pedestrians? Do I have a scratch on my car and I don't even know? Have I been involved in an accident? I can't remember getting here. And it was a bit of a shock. Maybe some of you have had a very similar experience. So this is a classic example of what I call mindlessness. My new mindlessness technique, by the way, is not just when I'm driving home from work, but my new obsession, salt and vinegar peanuts. I'll sit down with a little bowl of salt and vinegar peanuts, and next thing you know, the bowl's empty. I don't know where they went. I don't remember eating them. So many of you might have instances where suddenly you've been lost away in your thoughts, off and on, around and round, and you don't remember anything. You've got no awareness. This mindlessness state is often referred to as default mode or mind-wandering states. It's research by psychologists in UCLA and Berkeley, California, have found that we're in this default mindless, mind-wandering state 47% of the time. 47% of the time, we're away with the fairies, away with our thoughts, and completely unaware of what's going on right in front of us. Thoughts are coming and going, and when one thought comes, another one comes, and we end up in these thought chains, one thought jumping to another, with almost no control, no direction, and zero awareness. Not only that, we've got that little inner voice, that little inner voice all day, every day, telling us what we should be doing, what we should be saying, what other people should be doing, how they should behave, how they should respect us, how we should think about them, on and on, constantly that inner voice, on and on and on in our minds. So all this mindlessness state is happening and without us knowing what's happening right in front of us. So we don't notice what's going on. We miss all the good stuff. We miss what's happening. And of course, all this mind wandering and this chatter, all this replaying and rethinking and anticipating and worrying about the future brings us more and more stress. And this stress can be quite relentless when we don't realize how badly it's affecting our state of mind. So when we think about stress and mindlessness, let's look at my little stress timeline. So here we are from go to woe. And here's my meeting with Sue that I know I need to have tomorrow. So before the meeting, I'm stressing. I'm worrying about what Sue's going to think. I'm worrying about her reaction. I'm worrying whether she's going to go off the deep end or, in fact, criticise me. I'm also anticipating what she might think or say or feel. I'm anticipating how things might go. I'm also visualising what her face is going to look like and how she's going to react. And, of course, the stress of dreading it, the stress of trying to figure out a way, can I avoid it? I wish I could avoid it. I wish it could be somewhere different. Dreading that negative outcome, dreading this event that I really feel is not going to be fantastic. It's something that's going to be perhaps not so great. Another part of the stress comes from playing out all the little scenarios. If I say that, will she say this? And if she says that, then I'll say that. And if she says that about Steve, well, I can say Steve did this. And if Rick says this, and I play out all these little scenarios in my head about how things may or may not go, what may or may not get said. So I'm stressing, and it's going in my mind over and over. then during the meeting, when I'm actually sitting with Sue, I might be distracted because I'm thinking about what I've been worrying about prior to my meeting. I'm thinking about all those scenarios, wondering if any of what's happening here is matching up, and I could be distracted by my own thoughts. Not only that, being stressed and worrying and not really paying attention could mean that I'm reacting very, very unconsciously to what Sue might be thinking, and she might also be misinterpreting the looks on my face or the way that I'm behaving because I'm not very aware of what's going on. In fact, Sue might even think that I'm being distant because I'm worrying and rethinking about what I'd said with Steve earlier the day before and his reaction of being unhappy. So I might not even be present for what Sue's saying. I might miss what she's saying. I might mishear it and interpret it a completely different way. After the meeting, that's when the stress cycle really ramps up. Depending on how it went, even if it did go well, I'll be replaying it in my mind, replaying, I should have said this, I could have said that, ruminating about what could have been, how it should have been, replaying in my mind those little gestures, those words, those thoughts that she shared with me. And of course, afterwards, the inner voice starts up, criticising, oh, you should have done this, Kathy, you should have done that, replaying, re-criticising and over-analysing every aspect of that interaction I had with Sue, and perhaps exaggerating things that really weren't important, and of course not really noting and paying attention to the important things that I might have missed because I wasn't so present. So this timeline doesn't just end there. After we've gone through this overplaying, overanalyzing, replaying, it leads us to the next stress cycle, going back to the worrying and anticipating and dreading the next interaction I'm going to have, maybe with Sue or maybe with anybody else. And this cycle repeats over and over and over. This cycle, of course, doesn't give us a break from the stress and can really wear down our resilience. And that's where we need our mindfulness. So let's have a look at what is mindfulness. Many people call it different things, and honestly, there's not one single definition. There's so many different aspects to it. So let's go through a few of them. At its simplest, mindfulness is a quality or a state of simply being aware. So that means just noticing what is here and now. Not just noticing external environment about the temperature or what we're seeing, what we're hearing, not just externally, but also internally. What's happening inside of me? Being aware of my thoughts, being aware of my feelings. So sensations, all of the above, being completely aware. That's the simplest part, but mindfulness goes one step further because we want to be aware of what's happening, but without all that inner talk and judgment that we have about what's happening. I like that, that's good. I don't like that, that's bad. I perceive things as good and bad through these lenses, from historics, from our likes, from our previous experiences. We constantly label and judge these things. Awareness is not good enough. We need to let go of those judgments as well. That's mindfulness, to be able to really see things as they are, see things objectively, not how we want them to be or how we think that they should be, but actually how they truly are, without all that clouded vision. Another aspect is deliberate attention. This sounds really easy, but we just talked about how did I get home from my drive. I wasn't paying attention, but somehow on autopilot, I got home and in theory, my car hasn't been smashed up. So deliberate attention is actually choosing to pay attention to what's happening. A wonderful analogy I like to describe is walking into your house and it's pitch black. You've walked in the front door and you've got a torch in your hand. You can't see a thing, but as soon as you switch on that torch light, the beam of light comes on and it points to something in the room. And by manoeuvring that torch beam around the room, you can see various things, your TV, your stereo, your settee, the couch, a coffee table, a plant, and you can move that beam of the torch to any part of the room to illuminate that aspect of the room where the other aspects of the room go back into darkness. When we talk about our attention, our mind is very much like that torch beam. We can choose to focus it on various aspects and not focus it on others. So mindfulness is the awareness without judgment and then deliberately paying attention to what we really need, not letting our mind wander away without that direction. So simply, it's being open and present right here, right now, and nothing else. We drop that inner voice, we drop all those feelings, and we're here. We're here to enjoy what's all around us. When was the last time you heard the birds chirp when you went for a walk down the street? Or even in your car, did you hear your favourite song when the radio was on? So it's really about being open and accepting of what's happening here today, right here, right now. I call it the 3 O's: open, objective, and just simple observation. A lot of people think mindfulness is about getting rid of thoughts and emotions, and it's such an awful thing to think that we're meant to be trying to get rid of them. Well, it's completely the opposite. Mindfulness can be thought of as switching on, not switching off. It's about focused concentration deliberately where we want. And then bringing this awareness into everything in our lives, we can respond with more control over what's happening. We may not be able to control many things in our life, but we can certainly control how we respond. And of course, we can bring control over our thoughts and what our mind pays attention to. So we stop all that knee-jerk reaction that can happen to different phenomena and stresses that happen in our life. And we come to our day-to-day being from a more natural and neutral state of mind. So let's look at mindfulness a different way and go back to our stress timeline. This time we're going to look at our stressless timeline. So we're going to look at it with mindfulness and how mindfulness can change it. So here's my meeting with Sue, same as before. So before the meeting, instead of all that worrying, we can just plan sensibly, objectively, with awareness, knowing what needs to be done, gather our thoughts, gather our data, gather our facts, and be prepared. Not worry and anticipate, but just be prepared. Have what I need in front of me, and know I can walk in there with complete peace of mind because I have what's there. We can drop all that worry, drop all that anticipation, and just be prepared and be confident that I've done what I need so I can talk to Sue with confidence. Then when we're meeting with Sue, or in fact any difficult stakeholder, we can come with complete presence. We can drop all that inner talk. We can drop all that judgment and self-criticism and be completely present and focused on what is happening, what Sue's saying, and how am I reacting as well. And not just that, we can stop that reaction, that stress reaction, and respond from a more controlled and measured point of view. And of course, we can pick up more things, what's happening in the meeting, and bring awareness. Perhaps we can pick up Sue's subtle acceptance or disapproval of a few of the things I'm saying. With that true presence and awareness, we'll actually be able to glean more from that interaction than perhaps when we're distracted. And Sue will notice the difference too, because she'll know that we're actually trying to pay attention rather than off with the fairies as we often can be. And then after our meeting, we can let go. We can be confident that we've done the best, we've been prepared, we've presented the facts, and done our best to make Sue understand and come to an outcome that we're both happy with. We can look forward with optimism without all that worry and replaying and say, well, we've done that now. Now let's get on with the job, accept what's happened and go forward, move ahead without just going and stagnating around and round and round. So it's completely different. We can move ahead, get the next steps done and drop all that stress, the no stress cycle. Easy enough, right? But it's completely quite difficult because our mind likes to get away from us. So the topic's all about resilience. And this Confucius saying I really find interesting. Our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. So when we think about the definition of resilience, it's often defined as coping with adversity or bouncing back from some sort of difficulty. And it's that capacity to deal with unexpected changes and circumstances. So we know that in life we can't control things and we can't avoid stressful events. It's not doable. It's a fact of life. But the way that we deal with it is is the key to resilience. Resilience is not some sort of magic quality that we're born with. It takes work to implement strategies to increase and strengthen resilience. Some of these factors are positive attitude, optimism, and the ability to manage emotions. So it involves a way of paying attention and thinking and behaving that anyone can learn and improve and grow. Resilience is also about recharging and not just mindlessly plodding on and enduring. It's not about toughing things out. It's about taking pause, about taking a break away, in this case, from that stress that goes on and stopping that cycle of stress and recovering, letting our mind recover from that event. And that gives us the ability to get up and go again. While taking time out to relax and having healthy relationships and knowing when to ask for help are also key, it's also key to build that inner strength. And that's where mindfulness comes in. We need a really cool head to see things objectively and take productive paths of thought and action. So with mindfulness, we can bring awareness into these mindlessness states, this stress cycle that we have, and go through this state when we're constantly ruminating about the past or projecting and worrying about the future. We can cut that cycle right in half and give us that pause and that break from stress that we need for resilience. So let us observe what's going on inside of our head and make sure that we can direct our thoughts more wisely away from all those troubling, worrying, disturbing thoughts. So after our stress events, or in fact before a stress event that we're anticipating, we can often be in a bad mood, creating negative stories and all that horrible anxiety that can rise. So we see the event through the lens of negative self-talk, thoughts and projections, beliefs and emotions all come into play, and so we're not seeing very clearly whatsoever. So this is all happening in that default mindlessness state where we're letting things get away with us without direction. So with mindfulness, we cut that chain. We cut it right off. We don't let it continue. We don't let all those thoughts come, and we let that mindfulness reorient how we see things and be more open and aware to go forward in a more positive way. So non-judgmental attention is absolutely key and reduces that negativity about, oh, I'm so hopeless, or it should be this. That non-judgment point of view can remove and reduce all that negativity that comes from that inner talk. And that also reduces the stress that is building and builds our resilience, because once again, we get away from all of that. So being aware from all these projections, we don't get overwhelmed with all the emotions and thoughts, but instead we can pause and reset and resist that downward spiral that doesn't allow us to wallow in these thoughts. We reframe, move on, and get ahead. So we can get more decisive and get moving into action with a positive outlook rather than worrying. So not letting those inner voice get a hold of us, and we can say, no, inner voice, no, shut up. I don't need to think that anymore. I'm going to park you, not pay attention, and I'm going to choose my awareness deliberately on what needs to be done in a more clear, accepting and open way without you taking control. Acceptance is the key. We can't change the past. The future is unknown and anything could happen. So we just need to let go of all of that and focus on what we can do at hand and know that we are skilled. We can do it. Things might happen. They might not be fantastic, but we can get past this. And from a clear point of view, we can figure out strategies to move on and go through. We can build those inner resources, build that inner resilience, goodness, and that can strengthen us as well. In fact, one last little point on resilience, that researchers have found when we apply mindfulness in this way, it actually changes the way our brain wires. Those neural networks change, and that also enables us to be more resilient in the future. So another stressful event won't even have the same effect as the one that we had in the past. It can build. So being mindful allows us to decenter this stress when it occurs and enable our core resilience skill to be able to pause, step back, reflect, shift our perspective, create options, and choose our actions and thoughts more wisely. So how do we do mindfulness? Well, it's not so easy, but it is. It's the easiest and the hardest thing at the same time. There's informal practice, which is really a day-to-day bringing awareness into everything that we're doing. It's a question of just pausing at any time, becoming aware of our mind racing away from us, and just clearing our mind, recalling and focus, and just take a breath and let go. It's available to you for free, 24/7, 365 days a year. Anytime you can just take that pause to let go, stop that inner voice, drop it, come back, reset, refocus, and become aware again. Become aware and let go of that disturbing cycle of stress. So it has that aspect of knowing what are we actually thinking, what should we be thinking, and then directing our thoughts to what is more positive for us. So that's that pause. All day, anytime. Now, just like going to the gym, and that's where my bodybuilder here on this slide is, formal practice, known as meditation, helps us be able to pick up when our mind is wandering, when we are getting lost in those stress cycles. By meditating, we're giving our brain a workout, and by meditating, we're actually allowing ourselves to easily and more quickly identify when our minds are in these mindlessness states. It's like going to the gym. And the point of meditation is not to be a good meditator. Just like people who go to the gym, we don't go to the gym to be good at the gym. We go to the gym because we want to look good in that dress. We want to look good at that dinner party. Or perhaps we want to run that marathon or climb those stairs a little less breathlessly. We go to the gym not for being in the gym. We go to the gym for the results after the gym. And meditation is very much the same thing. We meditate to become more mindful in our day-to-day lives, and that informal practice it comes to us naturally without much effort. We have only a few more minutes now, so I'd like to give us a quick opportunity for all of you out there to try a little bit of this mindful meditation very quickly. The first thing to understand that it's all about just being relaxed. The point is not to be good at meditating. The point is to be good at catching your thoughts and being aware. So I invite you now to sit somewhere comfortably, not too slouchy, not too hunched over, and find a comfortable position for your hands, perhaps on your lap or just in front of you, and just close your eyes, just gently. With your eyes closed, try to let go of thoughts. Try to let go of what's happened earlier today or what's going to happen later today, and just clear your mind and become aware of where you are and what's happening. And quickly and gently bring all your attention and concentration and just focus on your breath. Don't follow your thoughts, which they'll come and go. And if you're distracted or your mind wanders, you gently just come back to the breath. Your mind will wander, and it's completely natural. The point is not to get rid of that mind wandering, but become more aware of when your mind has wandered. So come back to your breath, close your eyes, clear your mind, and focus on that breath. Nothing special, nothing to do. Just breathe. Just notice the sensation of breathing in and then breathing out. Every breath is different. Every breath is unique. Just noticing. Breathing in, breathing out. Bring awareness to the movement of air in and out of your mouth or nose. Bring awareness to the feeling of your chest rising and falling. Notice the subtle in and out movement of your abdomen. Just gently feel that sensation of breathing. Breathing in and breathing out. If you find your mind has wandered away from your breath, that's no problem. Just simply notice, I've been thinking, and gently and deliberately bring your focus and mind back to your breath. Breathe in, breathe out, nothing else. If distracted by noise or something happening around you, just notice, distracted. Let that go and gently and firmly bring your mind back to fully focus and concentrate back on that breath. Breathing in, breathing out, letting go of all else, fully focused and just noticing the breath. Taking a breath in and letting a breath out. I hope that you feel a bit more calm and centered and clear from this very brief meditation. There's many great apps to help you do it. There's certainly great resources out there, and no two people like the same way more than once. There's thousands of different ways of meditating. It doesn't matter whether you pay attention to your breath or to a candle or to a picture that you love. The whole point of meditation is to increasingly be able to hold focus and notice when your mind has lost that focus and then calmly bringing it back again. It's not about not thinking. It's not about not being distracted. I can guarantee you that within a few seconds of trying to stay focused, a thought will come. The point is not thinking, but by letting that thought go and coming back over and over again. And that's like doing reps of your heavy weights in the gym. Your muscles get stronger, so too your mind will get stronger by not letting those distractions let the mind wander. The mind will be able to hold more closely to that object that we're trying. So in summary, we've talked a lot about resilience and stress today, But mindfulness and the mindful BA, mindfulness can be applied in so many ways. Just very briefly, about being mindful, being in with your team and your stakeholders, you're more present and you're able to listen without all that distracting self-talk going on. Especially when you're doing requirements elicitation, we can have real empathy for what's really the situational problem at hand. Instead of thinking about what would we do or what would we want or how do we see it, we can be completely aware with dropping all those projections and truly hearing and seeing things with clarity. And of course, with analysis, when we are doing those models or we are structuring our stories or our specs, we can really see things with clarity from an open point of view and say, I don't know everything, and perhaps there's something that can be learned here that I didn't realise before. Maybe I found something that can be even more valuable. Of course, these days we're running many workshops, so it's about really being open to what could happen, open our possibilities. That's where innovation really comes from. And of course, focus and flow in getting our work done day to day without distractions. Mindfulness can really help our concentration and help us with all that bombardment these days from all the hundreds and millions of distractions that happen with all those messages and emails. So mindfulness can help us concentrate and really GSD, get stuff done. So I think I've talked well and truly long enough, and I'd like to now invite you guys to perhaps throw some questions out there, and I want to thank you for listening so far. Just before I do that, I just wanted to make you aware that I am running a Mindful Product Ownership Workshop in London on September the 20th. It's a Friday. Now, while it says product ownership, mindful product ownership is really about that analysis and value analysis and deep empathy and understanding of requirements. Whilst it is a little bit agile, I know that many of you are working in an agile environment, BAs quite often play that role of product owners. So if you're interested, do come along. The website's there, which we're going to leave up there for you. And as a special offer for you guys coming into this webinar, if you'd like to save 15%, please enter the code MINDFUL2019 to receive that discount when you are enrolling. And of course, if there's any questions or you need further information, my email's there. But now over to you and Adrian.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kathy. I'm sure everyone found that really, really useful. I found that mindful exercise it's so relaxing. It cleared my head. Even though I know you did a similar exercise when I saw you present, it's just so powerful to get some calmness. So thank you for the presentation and the exercise. So if you're listening live and you have a question for Kathy, please do type the question in the Q&A window, and we'll cover as many questions as we can until the end of the hour. So our first question, this is an interesting one. Our first question is, how can we get other people to be less mindless? Now that's a tough question.
Well, unfortunately, I learned a long time ago that the only thing that we have control over is ourselves. I wish I was a puppet master and I could make other people more mindful. But we can't really make another person mindful. What we can do, though, is prompt them and say, how are you seeing this now? Are you seeing this objectively? Or perhaps ask them, hang on a minute, let's just refocus for a moment and just invite them to perhaps take a breath with you and to reframe the situation at hand. Because often we can get very caught up with the conversation or away with concepts and lose track and lose touch with what it is that we're trying to do. So whilst we can't really make them mindful, we can do something out loud that might prompt them to at least kind of come back and pause and reset.
Yeah, sort of like a gentle nudge, perhaps.
Exactly. Exactly. We can't control what their mind is doing, but we can encourage their mind to at least have a pause.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay, so another question. I'm pretty sure I can predict what your answer to this question will be, but I'll be interested to hear it. The next question is, what's your view on multitasking? Again, quite a big question.
Um, Well, it's interesting you should ask that. There's a lot of studies out there about multitasking, and there's some wonderful examples of people, especially I find mothers. I'm not saying anything about fathers because they probably do the same thing. You see that classic example of there's a phone wedged in an ear and they're stirring the pot of dinner and they've got the baby in the bouncer and the vacuum's over there. Whilst they appear that they're multitasking, unfortunately, the mind is only paying attention to one of those things. Which one is it? Is it the baby? Is it the phone call? Is it the stirring of the dinner? So it appears a little bit like we're multitasking, but actually all we're doing is fast task switching.
Mm.
And that exhausts our brains. It absolutely adds to stress. Our minds are in a constant state of stress. It's actually triggering all sorts of stress effects, which are a very neurological kind of chain reaction that happens in the base of our skull and the amygdala. And this multitasking creates actually more stress. So no matter what it is that we're trying to do, the best is always going to be to focus on one thing at a time. Even if you set a timer and say for 5 minutes, I'm going to do this. There's all sorts of apps you can use to remove distractions as well to get one thing done at a time. And by focusing on one thing at a time, you're not, you're actually increasing productivity because swapping focus, there's a bit of a mental price to pay by coming back to the next object of the attention all the time. So remaining focused on one thing at a time is actually more productive. It's unfortunate that I do talk to many people and they've got 5 projects and each project has so many different things. I don't find that the fact that we need to do different tasks through the day an issue. Focusing on one task at a time is critical, but obviously when we're context switching, once again, we can really have a big detriment to our productivity by having to rehash things. So keeping a bit of a tight rein on the multitasking and setting aside little time boxes for yourself to focus on one thing at a time, even though you might have to accomplish 5 or 6 or 7 different things in a day. Focus on one at a time and get it done. And then you can put it aside and let that go and move on with the next one. And again, that helps you build that resilience, which we're talking about, because you're moving forward and be positive about it all, getting stuff done.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were talking there, Kathy. I was thinking. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I was thinking about conference calls, and it was reminding me of. I was speaking to someone recently who was saying that most of the stakeholders are all in the same building, but this culture of everyone, like if there needs to be a meeting, even though everyone's within walking distance of each other, have a call. And I was like, well, why? And I think it was because from what I gather, it's because people were doing their email. Well, if I go to a meeting, it's bad etiquette to be doing my email while I'm in front of you, but I can do it if you can't see me do it behind a conference call. And you kind of think, but you're either there or you're not, right? It's
Exactly. What are you paying attention to, your email or your conference call? Because we all know what happens. What was that again? Sorry, can you repeat that? I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
Never heard that before, said no one ever.
Yeah. Exactly. So okay, so questions coming in thick and fast, which is always great. So our next question is it helpful to actually actively recognize the judgments we make by writing them down so that we can challenge them?
Interesting. I like that idea very much, as long as they don't fuel the fire of negativity. We are our worst critics. We are. And if we note down those judgments, but also note down our judgments without judging ourselves for judging. That sounds like
Meta judgment.
it kind of is what I'm saying. It can be interesting to find those patterns. I think it's interesting to understand, what am I thinking now? How am I seeing this now? Why have I thought this way? It can be interesting to analyse that, but that over-analysis can also add to the problem. So I think that it can be helpful in our job as a BA, perhaps, to wonder, why did we think the stakeholder reacted that way, and see if we can learn something from it. But if it's unproductive by using that judgment to use that to self-criticise further, then of course I don't think it's helpful. So I think it's important as an analyst to see if there's something that can be learned, but it's got to remain positive.
Yeah. It's interesting, because I was just as that question came in, I was thinking about, because it's funny, isn't it? Because we all sort of have biases. I guess it's how, to some extent, how humans survive, because you're bitten by something, so you then fear that thing, type of thing. And I always so when I'm doing consultancy work that involves call centers, I've seen some very bad cultures in a call center, and that means that I tend to have you tend to start to get into a bit of a cycle of prejudging and thinking, well, they're going to be measuring people with really blunt measures, it's going to be a really toxic culture, and actually it isn't always. So maybe if it's something like that, where it's, I tend to view the world through this filter, and I can't yet change the filter, but at least if I know there's a filter, maybe that's a first step.
Absolutely. And that's where that non-judgmental, because those perceptions, we are a product from our past, and that past has a habit of tainting the future, and your filters are not my filters, so it can be really difficult when you think, oh yeah, I've seen this before, I'm going to go into I do a lot of agile coaching, and I think, oh yeah, here we go again, it's going to be another case of this, and so you're already tainting, and you're completely not aware, because you're hearing things through that biased point of view. So I think the knowing that you've got a bit of a bias and your blind side is great, but then letting that go and just saying, hang on, no, we're going to be open here. Even though we know we've got that blind spot, it can help us, actually prompt us to stop that, cut it, stop that, those memories, and see what's here, which is a completely different situation than the previous one.
Yeah, definitely. I like that analogy, blind spots. Again, it's like driving, you look in your mirrors, you at least know you've got a blind spot, or you look over your shoulder. So it's a prompt to think about things. So the person that asked that question, they come back and said that they like the answer, meta judgments, and they say that their intention was definitely around learning and not fueling the fire. So
nice.
That's a good point, well made. So, okay, so our next question is, do you need to take time out, like the exercise we just did, to be mindful? And if so, how do you manage to remain mindful on days where you have back-to-back meetings? Wow, tricky.
So that's where we talked about the formal and informal practice. So formal practice, absolutely. You can't meditate and drive. I don't think it'd be a good idea, because meditation is all about focusing on one thing at a time and trying to maintain that focus as much as you can, and noticing when your mind doesn't focus on that thing any longer. So that has to be done with a deliberate kind of space. It can be 1 minute, it can be 5 minutes, it could be an hour. If you're really keen, try doing it for 7 days. It doesn't last for 7 days, I can tell you now. So that formal meditation, yes, it does take time out. I find different people will find that time better in the morning or at lunch or in the evening. Everybody's got their own personal likes about that. But the informal mindfulness doesn't take any time at all. You can do that without anything special. The trick, though, is remembering to clear your mind, take a breath, and drop all that perceptions, and drop all that stress, and drop all that self-talk, and drop all those projections we've got going on about the past that we've just mentioned. The trick is remembering to take that minute. that's where many people find apps. I'm not I'm not an app person. I avoid my phone like the plague. People think I'm in IT. What's going on? I said, no, I try not to. I do things analog because I find them less distracting. But there's apps that you can take that literally at random times through the day, they'll buzz or beep or ding, and they'll prompt you to come back and be present again and bring that mindfulness into awareness of the right here and come back and reapproach the situation. And that doesn't take anything. So in between meetings, when you are back to back, you can just literally sit down at the beginning of the first meeting and literally take a deep breath in and out, or 3 if you can, just with that, bringing yourself into the room, dropping what's been, being prepared, looking forward, being open, and be present, and then come at the meeting that way. One of my favourite people I love to talk about, and I know he knows that I wind him up, a lovely guy by the name of Peter Bosselman. Now, Peter Bosselman lives in Germany, and he works for SAP. His title is Global Mindfulness Director.
Wow.
And what they've started at SAP is at the beginning of the meeting, of every meeting, they have a mindful beginning. So they ask everybody at the beginning of a meeting is to just take that breath at the beginning of each meeting to come to the meeting present. So it's a very simple thing that doesn't take more than a second to do. Even inside of a meeting, if there's someone changing or yourself, if you're about to speak, take a moment to quickly recheck your mind, open, be present, and consider what you're going to say, and stop that kind of your mouth going off before your mind does. So you can practice mindfulness literally all day, every day, by simply remembering and focusing and being aware rather than being lost in thoughts, which happens, as I said, 47% of the time. So you don't need time out to do that informal practice.
It's really interesting, Kathy. As you were talking there, I was thinking about a book that I've read, I listened to the audio version of it recently, and I've forgotten the author's name. I was looking on my phone on Audible to try and find it, but I can't. It's called Atomic Habits, and it's about essentially getting into, changing habits that we have and deliberately building habits. And one of the tips from that I found very useful, which I hadn't really thought about applying to mindfulness until just now, is this idea of habit stacking, which is where if you want to do something else, like stack it onto something you already do. So, I guess, for example, if you wanted to be mindful between meetings, you could say, right, every time I leave a meeting room, I'm going to take a breath, I'm going to recenter, and I'm just going to take 5 seconds, then I'm going to go on to the next meeting. Do you think that could kind of work, Kathy?
Absolutely. Even a simple thing of every time I look at my phone.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Before I press that button and look what my notifications are.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I love that concept of restacking, and that's, I think, a very good key to not make it an extra thing, but incorporate it to something that's existing. I really like that concept.
Fantastic. So there's one of our listeners has made a number of observations, but one that I really like is that as a BA, sometimes it's almost like we need to read the mind of the client, and actually we need to read the minds of people who may not at all be mindful, which they put as an observation rather than a question. But it's an interesting point, isn't it, that actually we talked about how we as practitioners want to understand our lenses and biases and be more mindful. But actually one thing we've got to be conscious of is that other people have their own lenses and may or may not be aware of those lenses. So it's a really complex, dynamic situation we live in.
Absolutely. I think by being aware and being present in that interaction, we might be able to pick that up too, because if we let our own projections drop and our perceptions and we are more aware, we're probably going to be more in touch with what's happening for them. And that can be really powerful when you pick up something that they haven't said specifically, but you can pick it up because of your simple presence in that moment. you might subtly get that little hint, that little gesture on their facial expression that might give you an insight into what's going on for them, which perhaps, you can pick up on. And again, that psychic ability comes in.
Definitely. Well, someone has just found the author for Atomic Habits. Thank you very much. Atomic Habits by James Clear. So thank you to the person who typed that into the chat window. Much appreciated. Well, Kathy, we could go on talking probably all day, but we have reached the end of the slot. So just before we close, you've mentioned your session, and I'd encourage you, if you're listening in or even on the recording, do if you can consider going there. As I say, I was blown away when I saw Kathy present live. So if you enjoyed the recording, working with Kathy in the real world would be like 100 times bigger and better than that. But if people want to stay in touch with you, is email the best way, or Twitter or LinkedIn? How can people stay in touch with you and what you do?
Fantastic. Email is fantastic. LinkedIn, of course, Kathy Berkidge. Just my name is, I haven't even got it on this slide. Kathy Berkidge, I'll put it back up. I'm sure you can put it at the beginning of this. If they're happy for everybody to LinkedIn with me. I noticed, I have got a Twitter account, but I noticed how I didn't like it, and it was enabling me not to be mindful. I never had Facebook, and I have no other social other than LinkedIn now. I find it's distracting, and it's not productive to me personally. So emails and LinkedIn, definitely more than happy to keep in touch with people that way.
Fantastic. So we have reached the end of our slot. If we haven't been able to answer your question, apologies. If people have questions after, can they drop you a quick email, Kathy?
Absolutely, and it'll be wonderful if you can collect any questions, and maybe we can send them out to the participants as a bit of a summary for those that we haven't got around to. That'd be fantastic.
Fantastic, excellent. Well, that concludes this evening's webinar. So, well, this evening for Kathy, this morning for me, and morning, evening, afternoon, depending on where you're listening from. So all that's left for me to do is to say a massive thank you, Kathy, for taking the time out to present this webinar. It's been really, really insightful. So thank you so much for that. And also a massive thank you to everyone who has tuned in live or has watched the recording. As a reminder, the BA Community webinar series, really what this is about is bringing topics that we wouldn't necessarily normally talk about in the BA community. So there are loads and loads of good resources out there already for, how to write a better use case or whatever. But the vision behind this series was really perhaps to blur the edges a bit and look at other disciplines, other practices. So after the webinar, you'll get a link to a survey. And it's just 3 questions on how you found this webinar, what we could do better, what we could improve. Please fill that out. But also the 3rd question is other topics that you might like us to cover in future. And if there are any topics you'd like covered, please do put them in there. And I'll do my best to cover them. So fantastic. We do have another webinar planned for July, which will be about assessments and whether they are good, bad, or indifferent. So if you are thinking about like organizational maturity assessments and the many assessment frameworks that there are out there, so we'll be taking a sort of provocative look at some of the benchmarking or the idea of benchmarking that's out there. So you'll get a link to that as well. So so thank you very much everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again, Kathy.
Thank you, Adrian, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. Much appreciated. Thanks for having me.